Okay, so last week we have talked about how to interact with the file system of Linux, and especially the commands related to how would you enter a directory, exit out of a directory, how would you look for the file systems and different things. Now today we start our lecture with the first thing, which is known as a text file. And by text file I mean ASCII text file. Now what is an ASCII text file? It's basically a pure text file, so to say. So the thing is, for example, if you write something in some word processor, right? For example, Microsoft Word or Apple Pages or Google Docs, and then you submit or save that particular file usually by this kind of extension as which is very famous nowadays for the modern word processors like Microsoft Word as .docx. And this kind of text file actually contains no blank spaces. So if the blank spaces are filled with special characters by the particular word processor. But what we are wanting to see here is pure text files, and which ends basically with .txt, for example, or for other programming languages like .cpp, .jl, .py. This extensions added files are basically ASCII text files, which we will use in the future lessons. And to deal with or to edit this kind of files, we can use many tools in Linux, but one of them which we use from the command line interface is called nano. Now nano is a command and an executable binary, so to say, and for example we have a file called notes, and now we enter this, or we want to edit this notes file, so nano notes, and then we press enter. Now here it is. Now this is a text file. You can move your arrow keys to interact with the directions of the cursor, and you can just write some text, delete some text. It's just a plain text editor like you see sometimes in Microsoft Word, like I have forgotten the recent name of the Microsoft Word text editor, but it's probably called, the old one was called Notepad. And in Linux also you would find something, and that's obviously a graphical user with the graphical user interface. In Linux also you would find something similar, but probably it's called XED or text editor for me. And if you click on text editor, you open something like this, where you can also type some text, and these are blank spaces that you mention, but apart from it you can't. You see, when I'm now, right now, believe me, I'm pressing the down arrow key, but you can see that the cursor is not going down because I have not given a blank space on the next line. So if I press enter, then the cursor goes to the blank line. Anyways, but for our cases we want to use the command line text editor. One of them is nano, which I'm using right now, and one of them is a famous text editor which is, I think you would get everywhere. It's called VI, or so to say, now we have more improved VI as Vim or VIM, and the text editor version that I'm using as VI is NeoVim. It's all the same with simple commands, just every upgrade has some different extensions and everything. Anyways, so regarding these things, you can look it up in the internet. It's super easy, but for the most simplistic one, we use nano. So now we can see that this is a text file which I've written in nano, as well. And you can see in the bottom, you would see many commands to interact with nano. For example, control. So this basically exponentiation key, which you see an upper arrow key, the arrow head, but not the complete arrow, is basically representing the control key in the keyboard for an US international keyboard. And so control key in the keyboard, and X represents obviously the letter X. So if I press Control and X, you see we basically save and exit the text editor file. Okay, so we go to Nano Notes again. This is an editor, and now we would like to talk about four things in our four major things actually in our today's lecture. The first one is called sudo or super user. Now, what is a super user? A super user is basically the level of permission that a user should have in a Linux distribution to make changes in the software or in the software department, right? So, and also there would be some cases where we actually would like to have access to some special permissions with the Linux system to execute some specific commands. So for now, you can think of it as a special permission where you can alter the system, right? And whenever you want to edit or whenever you want to execute any command with super user privileges, you just add this keyword sudo, so sudo, in front of that particular command, whatever you want to execute. Okay. Now, next thing is I would like to discuss about the package management of Linux system, and for that you need to know about, not in depth, but some conventions. And the convention starts actually with the history of Linux distributions. So in Linux world, there are two families of Linux distributions. I mean, nowadays there are also many. But the major enterprise level Linux have two distributions, specific distributions. So the first Linux distribution family is called Debian. So Debian, and the second one is called Red Hat. Now, on a very basic level, these two distributions are actually differentiated with their package managers. Now, what is a package manager? A package manager is very simply put a software tool that helps to install different softwares or different packages, so to say, in a Linux system. Now, if you're familiar with Mac OS, you would see that there is something called brew or homebrew, in which you actually use this command called brew and then probably install and then some package name, right? Some package name. And this thing is actually one kind of package manager for Mac OS. Now, if you're familiar with that, it's almost similar to this package management of Linux. Now, as we are using Linux Mint, and Linux Mint is actually coming from the family of Debian or Ubuntu. So Ubuntu, whoever is familiar with Linux, Ubuntu is a very famous name because Ubuntu is one of the distributions that has led out to many other distributions in future. Now, the Ubuntu based distribution which we're using, Linux Mint, is actually based or uses this apt package manager, and this thing is similar to brew. So you just, if you want to install any package, you just use apt, and then you basically install any package with the super user, right? Because I've told you that to make certain changes in your system, you should have super user privileges, right? And installing a software is one of them. So for example, I open a new terminal here. You see it here, and as you can see, I type if I want to install any package, right, from the base repository. Now, what is a base repository? The base repository is the repository that comes inbuilt with the distribution that you install in your system. So for example, we have Linux Mint. Now Linux Mint has some repositories, and these are basically the software centers, right? The centers or the servers where the packages are there. So what we do here is basically how to install a package. You use the super user privilege. So add a sudo, and then you write apt. So you're telling that computer use super user, and then with the super user you call the apt package manager, and with apt you call the install command under the apt package manager. So sudo super user, use the apt to install, and then a package name, for example gedit. So it's a text editor, right? It's a text editor I want to install. Now if I press enter at this point, then it will ask for my password. Now if you give the password, basically you get the super user privileges in that system, and now the computer can install the software with this dependence. So these all things that are written are nothing to be worried about. These are dependencies, the softwares that need to run this software which you want to install, right? And now if you give confirmation, so Y, and then if you press enter, it would install it automatically. Now for the exemplary reason, I don't want to install it, so I obviously say no, and then press enter. It aborts the installation. So this is how we basically install a package from a base repository. Okay, now what we do is we would like to install the programs that we need in our future lessons. Now we close out from this nano. So how do we do it? Basically we press Ctrl plus X, and then if you press Y, it will tell you that you want to save the file as notes. If you press enter, then it saves as a note, and you exit out of nano. Okay, and one command per day. Let's do it like this. So let me give you a special command today which you learn. So if you want to see the contents of the file notes, right, without even going into nano, how would you do it? There is a command, Linux command called cat, and cat means concatenate. So basically what it does is basically prints out whatever you have in your file on the shell directly. So you press cat and then you press the text file name. It only helps in the text files, right? And as we already know that if we press tab, it auto completes, right? So pressing tab auto completes the file name. Now if you press enter, you see it has concatenated the text file in this shell. Okay, good. Now we would like to install the packages what we need for our lectures. So I have made a list here, and we can look at it. So for example, I think, yes, this is the thing. So let's concatenate lec3.md. If you concatenate, you see, okay. So these are the things that we need to install and check. So first of all, this is a general thing that one should do after installing a Linux system, and is that when you install a Linux system, what happens is you take one of the installation file from their website which they have built on particular date, right? And now obviously, being an operating system, every operating system gets updates on a regular basis. So for example, the the Linux operating system which you've installed is released on 1st of January, and now you are in, for example, 29th of March. So obviously the Linux system has got upgraded or updated a little bit, right? So in Ubuntu based systems, which we are using now for us Linux Mint, we use something like sudo apt update to update the repositories from where they should take the updates from of the packages you're already installed. And then you write sudo apt upgrade -y. Now this -y is a flag. What flag? A flag means you already say this command that I would like to auto confirm this command. So basically this y, so you, as you, if you remember it from the last example I've shown, that when you want to install any package, when you write sudo apt install a package name and then you press enter, it gives you a confirmation message whether you want to install the package or not for the final time, and then you press y and enter. So basically what it does, it -y is telling this command sudo apt upgrade that yes, I want to upgrade. So these flags are actually, you would be more learning about it in the future things. There are many flags for many commands, and this is one of the examples of how a flag is used in Linux command. So we say to upgrade the system with a -y flag to auto confirm the command. And after upgrading these things, we would need some basic tools for our, future lessons purposes, right? Now the thing is, what we need to do in order to install some of the packages that we need is that we need to check some already preloaded packages. So there are some packages that comes preloaded with an operating system, and we need to check this so that we don't get into any problematic things afterwards, like dependencies. So for example, the first thing that we need to check, so let me actually go to full screen now without me in the screen. In that way actually we can so I would like to put two terminals here so that you can also see, and so okay, so now we have two terminals and we see what we have to do. So let's, for example, the first thing, we need to check these things, right, whether this is available. Now to check anything that is available, or to check the program if it is available or not, so the first thing is that we need a Python to be checked. So whether the Python is installed or not. How do you check that? You write which Python. Now I would not execute this command because I want to tell you one important thing regarding here. When you will type this which Python in Linux Mint for the first time, you would not get any result back. So I would show this Python thing later. So let's, for example, let's search for which curl. So the next one. So which is a command in Linux that says that whether the package is installed or not. For example, we want to see whether curl is installed or not. So which curl, and press enter. Okay, so it shows it has a path, user/bin/curl, and then we check again which git. So git is also installed, user/bin/git. Now as I told you that when you install the system for the first time, and if you type which Python and press enter, it would not show you anything. Why? Because Python has some naming conventions in Linux, especially in Ubuntu distributions, which I've seen, and I don't know why they have not removed it. So basically you have to type which Python 3 to get the location of the Python, because the Python that we would be using or interested in is the version 3. So Python comes in two versions, 2 or within 2 and 3, and 3 and beyond. So the version that is installed in Linux Mint by default in the latest release of Linux Mint is Python 3 but not Python 2. So for that reason, actually, they make the name or make the binary as Python 3 but not Python. Now there is a trick to get rid of writing every time Python 3, and I will show you later in the next lecture how is it done, because then we talk with something called bash scripting, and there it would be much more clear. Okay, so which Python 3? Now if I press enter now, it will show because I have already made some things. Anyways, so Python is installed. It's already giving me the locations. So these three things are installed. Okay, fair and very good. Now what we need to do is we need to install some packages additionally. And the first one is called pip. What is a pip? Pip is an additional package manager to install some modules, right? So how do we install pip? To install pip, go to a web browser. If you search pip Python install, and you would find the first link, installation pip documentation. If you go there, you would see here. So either you can install this script and then you use the command, but I would recommend you to go through the default package managers, because that would be much more convenient for you guys. So you click this link, alternative methods using Linux package managers, and if you click this link, it will show. So you go down and see Debian Ubuntu. So just copy paste this command and you would be done installing pip. Now probably in my system pip is already installed, so I would copy this thing, because I would put it in the I would be sharing you the link in the description, so no worries, you don't have to find it. I would share you the link. So this is how to obtain the pip. Now after installing the pip, if you look for obviously which pip, you see the pip is already installed. Okay, now the next thing that we need to install is something called JupyterLab. And what is JupyterLab? It's a text editor. It's an IDE, which means an integrated development environment where we would develop or we would test some codes on it. So these are some softwares that we need. So how do we install JupyterLab? We install JupyterLab using pip install. Now you can and you type JupyterLab and Jupyter. So 2 and 3 we install using pip, and also 4. So we would keep these packages as handy. So pip install JupyterLib, Jupyter, matplotlib, we install these 3. And pip has a good or actually every package manager which I have discussed, apt and also pip, it already can take many installation packages name at the same time, and it can also download simultaneously. So now if we want to install this thing, we press enter, and as you can see it downloads, it installs everything, and everything is downloaded now. Now if I want to see whether it's installed correctly, we have to type this command pip list and then the certain package name, so matplotlib for example. If you press enter, okay, pip list, I'm sorry, so pip, I think I need to correct it here. You have to write pip list, which lists all the packages, and then you have to give um, a perpendicular line, and then you need to write grep. Now grep is a command that actually detects or looks for certain keywords. So what we do is here we list all the pip packages installed, and then we pipe. Now pipe is basically you push this command with this condition that after listing all the packages, please grep, or so to say, please look for this keyword, which is the package name, so matplotlib. And if I press enter, you would see it looks from this whole list only the matplotlib and prints the result here. Now similarly you can do for the others. So grep jupyterlab. Okay, jupyterlab is installed. Also look for Jupyter. Jupyter is installed too. So we have got all three of them installed. And now we will go for the most important part of our installation, is the Julia. So Julia is a programming language with which we would code actually the Hartree-Fock code for the first electron structure theory thing, and you would be also coding much with it. So Julia is the most important installation you would require now, right? How do we do that? The thing is, I would provide you the link. So there is a thing called Julia Up, which is an installer. So let's go to the link. So this is the link. So let's go to the link. I click the link, and then you would end up in this page. Yeah, and then you can see go down, and then you would see the process. So you would find this piece of code, the piece of command basically, which uses curl, and then so basically you have to just copy paste it. So copy the code, copy, and then just paste it here. So paste and then press enter. After pressing enter, you would see, just stay with the default installation. It would tell you default installation is actually good. You can also uninstall it using this command after installation, Julia self uninstall, and it will uninstall immediately. So for default, just press enter, and then it would install Julia, and we have to wait for some seconds to install it. It will be done in a few seconds. So now it's actually done, right? Now we close this. Now what we do is we go to the other shell, we open a new shell, new window, and now to call Julia, whether the Julia is properly installed or not, how do we get to know? Just simply type Julia in that shell and press enter, and the Julia shell is activated. So this is how you confirm that Julia is installed correctly. Now to come out of this shell, you press Ctrl plus D and you exit out the shell, and then we are done. So we have already in the 5. Now for the 6th thing, what you need to do for the 6th thing is it's the software called Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio Code helps us basically it is basically an IDE or a programming environment where we will code, and it's also necessary because it makes things easier. We don't want to be dealing much with the like command line interface text editors, because they are pretty powerful, let me clear you, but they're not practical to use, right? So for big projects you need something called IDE which makes things easier. So we are not, I mean, We can be coders, like good coders, I'm not telling, but if we want to keep things simple, and that makes our workflow much more easier. So for example, we want to install the Visual Studio Code, and it's also very easy. Just go to this link, which I will be giving in the descriptions. And then you see all the options of installers, like the windows you have done before. What you need to do, you need to click on this .deb file. Obviously your system is not Windows and Mac. You have Linux, so this penguin mascot is the Linux mascot. And as I have told you that our system, that is Linux Mint, is basically a Debian or Ubuntu based system. So you need to click on this, and then basically you would install this .deb file, double click, and just press yes, and you are done. And once you are done with the Visual Studio Code, then you are completely done with whatever the requirements needed for the course, right? So these are the things that you need to know for now. I would like to conclude my lecture today. It is a little bit lengthy, I know, but these are the things you need to do for as the prerequisites for the lecture. So next time we talk about directly with usage of the IDEs like jupyterlab, Jupyter, which we've installed, and Visual Studio Code, and how do we configure the Visual Studio Code for our coding purposes, right? And then we would like to go to the next session. We'll be dealing with the Julia and further more. So for now, thank you, and see you very soon.